Ladies, gentlemen, good morning. Now I invite the panelists to take a seat. Now is the session about transport, hydrogen for mobility. Structure, you're quite familiar with it. 10 minutes of introduction from the Clean Hydrogen Partnership portfolio of projects. Introduction of our distinguished panelists, the actual panel, and then question from the audience. The European Commission has set ambitious targets linked with the Green Deal to make Europe a carbon neutral continent by 2050. This translates then into emission reduction, 90% for the transport sector in total. But this is then further broken down per transport mode with different horizon of time for the reduction of the emission or the introduction of sustainable renewable fuel in the case of maritime and aviation. To support this vision, this strategy, I have highlighted two main instruments or financial instruments. AFIF, calls linked with the AFIR regulation, and the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking. AFIF is for the infrastructure to provide the hydrogen at the port, at the airport, on the road when it's needed. And the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, it's a research and innovation fund for hydrogen technologies, from production of the hydrogen to its end use. And I will tell you about these projects. So roughly transport in the JU is 33%, 1/3 of all the activities, 80 projects, 900 million euro. So I will summarize now in the next 8 minutes what we do in there. So if you are coordinator of project, you don't see the logo, it's normal, I had no time. But we acknowledge the feedback of your project. So things that we've been doing on the R&D, the building blocks, to go from micro to macro, meaning the catalyst, the MEAs, the stacks, the balance of plants, whatever, that will be then used as a powertrain in different vehicles, and these vehicles, or fleets of these vehicles, being tested in operational environment. There is a feedback loop as well from this demo project toward the R&I building blocks, meaning fuel cell degradation, for example, will be studied in a second generation of fuel cell product. And now move to the different transport mode. Historically, two flagship projects, one on cars, the other one on the buses. H2ME, H2ME2 and Zephyr, altogether 1,800 cars, more than 50 hydrogen refueling stations, more than 50 millions of kilometers driven by these vehicles. One key learning, if you want, is the viability of business case with fleets of these vehicles when they are deployed as taxi, for example. In Paris, you have the vehicles together with the infrastructure. Have a look in Brussels, you would be able to spot some of hydrogen taxis. Sporadically, here and there, you could find some. I move to the buses. Jive 2. More than 250 buses in 18 sites, different geographies, different operational requirements, different OEM, different types of fuel cells. And this variety of the technology has proven it works. Hydrogen buses works. Now the efforts remain on the commercialization, TCO, for example, of these buses. None of these projects would have been possible without the support of sister or brother projects from CINEA that provide the infrastructure to refuel the car and the buses. Move now towards heavy duty, which is clearly the focus of the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking. Trucks, we started in 2008. 11 garbage trucks. They're now accumulating the mileage, and we learn from these. The year after, 2019, with the project H2O, and actually you could see some of these trucks next door, behind the curtain there, 16 long-haul trucks, full deployment foreseen for the beginning of next year, and then large fleet, 150 heavy-duty trucks under H2 Accelerate project. We now move to the seas, where historically we started about the same time, 2017, by integrating fuels or developing fuel cells that would be marinized, suitable for the maritime environment, use them as a powertrain in different type of vessels, sea-going, short sea-going vessel, or fluvial type of vessels, together with the supply of electricity, onshore power, using stationary fuel cells. Then how to transport containers in a container terminal. We have been developing a reach stacker, yard tractor, or roll-on, roll-out tractor using hydrogen on board the fuel cells. And what we witness is a feedback loop, so-called, if you want, for the second generation of product. So multi-megawatt stack and fuel cell system for the maritime, and novel type of tank to transport hydrogen from one continent to the other. I now move on rail. FCH2 rail has been a successful prototype, if you want, tested over 10,000 kilometers on railways in Spain. Plus it uses a portable hydrogen refueling station. The result validates the setup. Maybe if you benchmark with electric powertrains, it's not there, but the TCO vis-à-vis diesel is being studied together with regulation linked with storage of high quantity of hydrogen on board a train. Aviation in the air. Heaven has been successful in putting the world first liquid hydrogen plane. It has flight for over 3 hours. Range is now 1,500 kilometers. And there is an agreement with a sister joint undertaking called Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking, that both of us would develop the technological bricks on the fuel cells, on the supply of the liquid hydrogen, on the storage of the liquid hydrogen on board the aircraft or on ground at the airport. And then these technologies would be integrated in a subsequent step from 2026 by Clean Aviation for flight and ground test. Move now, perpetual move does not exist. So the ships, the aircraft, the cars, trucks, and so on will eventually have to stop at a refueling station, get the hydrogen, and continue the journey. In there, some key metrics: 1 million kilograms of hydrogen dispensed from the Jive project. That's quite something. Some of the busiest hydrogen refueling stations are to be found in Paris, linked with the taxi fleets. 600 kilograms of hydrogen per day, it's now become their busy normal, if you want. And sustained availabilities for the best-in-class HRS, achieving 99.9%, which is normal. You don't want a taxi driver to be deceived, or a bus driver arriving at a faulty hydrogen refueling station. But the goal, the transition, is how to shift from small tank of 5 kilograms of hydrogen for car towards an aspirational target of 7 kilograms of hydrogen per minute on board a truck, so that the truck driver waits roughly 10 minutes from empty to a full tank of hydrogen. Last but not least, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, let's go together. None of the projects I've been highlighting would have been possible without the support, the collaboration. Take different shape, different time, different form, but with a twin program, and I've mentioned some of them in here: Interreg, 2.0, Europe Rail, Clean Aviation, Waterborne, CINEA, and a clear example is about the truck. The 150 trucks from H2 Accelerate, supported by the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking. The infrastructure to provide the hydrogen is part of other projects from CINEA, Greater H4 being one of them. That's it for an introduction. I will now give the mic, if you want, to my fellow co-moderator, Steffen Møller-Holst, Vice President at SINTEF in Norway, and leader of the Technical Committee on Hydrogen for Mobility for more than 16 years.
Thank you so much, Lionel. I'll just briefly introduce you to the objectives of this session. The objectives are threefold. You already covered partly the first point, Lionel, in your introduction. So initially we will shed light to EU's stringent emission targets for mobility and hydrogen's role in that picture. Secondly, we will discuss how transport segments may individually as well as jointly contribute to how we can reach those targets. And last but not least, we'll also discuss how we can best shape and organize the future public support and the support schemes for sure to reach the future targets that we are all jointly addressing. So having said that, I will give the word to each of the distinguished speakers for a 3-minute introduction to their who they are and what their role is, primarily then linked to hydrogen as a fuel. So I will start with Sebastien Dubois from Clean Aviation. Please take the floor and the microphone.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and good morning everyone, or good afternoon. We are just on the edge. I'm Sebastien Dubois. I'm the head of program development within the Clean Aviation joint undertaking. And I would like to provide you with some insights about who we are and what we are doing. So Clean Aviation is private-public partnerships like Clean Hydrogen, which was put into motion by the European Council end of 2021 in order to implement the objective of the Green Deal to support the transition towards carbon neutral for the aviation sector by 2050. Our ambition is to address that approach, is to further mature technologies which are required. But when you look at the perspective of the aviation sector, if we want to be able to transition towards carbon neutrality, we need to address 4 levers. The first one is technology, which is the raison d'être of clean aviation. The second is about sustainable aviation fuel. And sustainable aviation fuel will contribute for up to 50% of that transition. Technologies up to 30%. Both are largely dependent on hydrogen, because on one end, the future of the aviation can be with hydrogen technologies, either fuel cell or H2 direct burn. I will have the opportunity to further develop that. And when we are talking about sustainable aviation fuel, this is either biofuel, which does not require hydrogen, or this is power to liquid. And power to liquid requires a huge quantity of renewable energy and hydrogen in order to achieve that goals. The other levers are about optimizing the operations in the sky and the carbon-based measures. The combination of all that elements will contribute to support the transition towards carbon neutral aviation by 2050, on condition that we are capable, first of all, to get access to sustainable aviation fuel. And this is the reason why the European Commission has created the level playing field with RefuelEU regulation on one end. And secondly, that we have the technologies which are on the rendezvous to be deployed and to enter into service into a new generation of aircraft from 2035 onwards. And the combination of both, if we have the right level of replacement of existing aircraft with that new aircraft, will provide the necessary elements to converge towards carbon neutral aviation. This is what Clean Aviation is doing. We are further maturing technologies with the aim on one end to develop the brand new technologies that will address 2 big market segments, which are currently responsible for up to 55% of the emission. What we call the regional market, the one which is operated on the average distance of 200 nautical miles, point-to-point connections, and the one addressing, in fact, the short, medium-range aircraft, which are the ones which are currently operated in Europe from point to point between big capital cities. The last one is about 2/3 of the volume of aircraft which are currently produced. And that's why that 2 segments are the important one. They will be fed by either, in fact, hydrogen technologies on one end, or hybrid electric, or technologies largely relying on SAF. Which means that to conclude my introduction, if we want to succeed, we need to address the combination of all that elements. We'll not do it alone. We'll do it, in fact, in combination with other actors at EU level, together with Clean Hydrogen for the technologies, at national level, because 80 to 90% of the investment are currently made at national level, and with regions as well who are contributing in that exercise. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So let's proceed to Isabelle, please. Thank you.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having the ports here. So we as ESPO, we represent the port managing bodies of all European member states here in Brussels. And of course, I said it already last year, you know, that for us, we move of only looking at transport as such, looking at energy, but it all comes together. So ports are in fact hubs of transport, hubs of energy, and hubs of industry. And if we then look at hydrogen, in fact, these three aspects are exactly coming together in the port. Hydrogen in transport, of course. The main thing is that for instance, for shipping, we look very much at hydrogen carriers like ammonia and methanol, of course. And this is one aspect, but we also think at ports are also hubs of energy. So if we want to have hydrogen for mobility, ports will also play an important role in bringing it in storing it, etc., as a commodity, in connecting the supply and the demand. And this will happen either the import of hydrogen through ships, but of course also the transport to the hinterland through pipelines, essentially. And then the third thing is that ports, and not all ports, but quite some ports are important hubs for industry. And there as well, and for industries, in energy-intensive industries, and maybe that's a bit out of the scope of this panel, but I think it's all has to be seen together, that if you want to keep these industries in Europe, you will also have to look for solutions and see that we can boost the use of hydrogen in these industries. And this also makes, because it's also having these ports as bringing all these aspects together, very important players in this whole debate. If we just have to see, are we making progress? Yes. Is everything there? Will it be easy to meet the challenges? I think there are still quite some to-dos, and I can get later into that, but if I just name that, it's space, permitting, funding, investment security, competitiveness, complexity, lack of skilled labor. So, but I leave it there, because these are maybe problems we can discuss further on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you touched upon it already, Isabelle. Infrastructure and availability of the fuel is crucial. So please, Richard Ferrer, could you fill in and say a few words?
Yes, thanks. Hello, everybody. So I'm Richard Ferrer. I'm the head of the alternative fuel sector in the Climate Infrastructure Environment Agency, CINEA. So as managing, in particular, the alternative fuel infrastructure facility, what we are aiming at is to provide the financial means, I mean grants, support for the public or private operators to deploy their projects in terms of mainly alternative fuel supplies. So, of course, within the alternative fuels, hydrogen has taken a large part over the last 2 years already, and we have several projects. At the moment, we are supporting projects in hydrogen with more than half a billion euro only for AFIF. But what is interesting when we talk about CINEA, about this agency, is that it offers all the operators a complete range, a wide range of financing possibilities at any stage of development and deployment of your projects. So the interesting thing is that if we accumulate all the programs that are available and for which we are launching regularly call for proposals, already we have provided more than 3 billion euro to hydrogen sector through the various programs. So it's not peanuts, I would say. It's already a good incentive. Out of this, it concerns more or less 140 projects, and a third of it is with the alternative fuel facility. So it's mostly focused on hydrogen refueling stations, for example. So the idea being to decarbonize transport services, transport in general in Europe, along our corridors and along our network, whatever the means of transportation, of course, so all the sectors, aviation, maritime, road sector, inland waterway, all the sectors are covered by the possibilities to get a financing. Just some words to say that when I mention a full range of possible support, it starts with Horizon Europe, which is the research program where you can develop projects based on hydrogen for specific components, etc., up to the TRL 9, I would say. So from deep research, I mean, up to TRL 9. But then we have other projects. I mean, we have one, not one, but the world's largest project, which is the Innovation Fund, aiming at providing net zero technologies and net zero industries, and this includes possibly as well transport, of course. So this is well to be, I mean, it has to be underlined. We have a LIFE program. We don't think about this, but LIFE program environment is tackling as well hydrogen. So we have already, there's 3 programs, and we have other programs, of course, available. And the CEF program, the Connecting Europe Facility, which includes the facility for alternative fuels, is available. And we have a running call, which is constantly open up to the end of 25. So you see that we have a wide range to cover the needs of the operators that, in particular, are the front runners and want to develop services in this regard. And of course, we are in an ecosystem even on the institution side, so we work closely with the Clean Hydrogen Partnership in particular to try to combine and to provide, let's say, combinations of support that could allow operators to build their business model. And we know at the moment that it's not that easy, and we have several obstacles that we are noticing in the implementation of our projects. But I hope that with all the panel or the range of support available, at least we could tackle some of the obstacles and facilitate the implementation of this new market.
Thank you so much. And then, Jaap, I guess we are all in the same boat, so let's hear from the zero-emission waterborne transport.
Thank you very much for inviting, and indeed we are all in the same boat, and we are all part of this ecosystem which was just referred to. We are one of the players in this ecosystem as Waterborne Technology Platform. We basically only deal with RD&I. And of course the deployment of the innovations, because we need to ensure that these innovations are being deployed. Since 2021 we have a co-program partnership on zero-emission waterborne transport, so a bit different type of partnership than the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, in which the objective in the end is to develop and demonstrate zero-emission solutions for all main ship types and services by 2030. That one sentence seems to be very easy, but that's an extremely complicated exercise. I will come back to that. I think specifically because the majority of the sector, and let's not forget, are small and medium-sized enterprises. We often look at the big players, but the majority of our sector are the small and medium-sized enterprises. Now, what does zero emission stand for in our definition? It's A, of course, eliminating greenhouse gas emissions fully, both from new ships as well as retrofitting the current fleet. And that's an extremely important one because of the average lifetime of a vessel. We'll come back to that. But also cutting pollution to air. What we often have seen is with the introduction of a new fuel, you then cut on greenhouse gas emissions, but potentially you have air pollution. And the third angle in our case is to eliminate pollution to water, because that's the third aspect which is important. Now, there are 6 angles of activities by which we look at how can we achieve these objectives. And one, of course, is the use of sustainable alternative fuels. We specifically speak about the use of sustainable alternative fuels because the production is, of course, something which is tackled by the Clean Hydrogen Partnership. We have a joint declaration. We have a cooperation with Clean Hydrogen on the building blocks needed in our sector. But we also already tackled this morning or this afternoon hydrogen carriers like ammonia and methanol, which will be extremely important to reach the target set by 2050. That's not the only one. We also look at electrification. For some ship types, electrification certainly makes sense. and on energy efficiency. And why? Energy efficiency will, one, be key to achieve the 2030 targets. 2030 in our terminology is yesterday. If I order a ship today, the ship will most probably be delivered in 2030, so it needs to be ready. But the second thing is, how can we sail as economically viable with sustainable alternative fuels, taking into account that they will be, for the moment, more expensive than the current fuels being used in this international context of the shipping environment. And then we look on how to integrate all of these technologies, of course, on board the existing and the new fleet. And I think that's a short setting the scene of what we do, and further elements will be brought into the panel later.
Thank you so much. And yeah, we have one microphone each. We were joking again. You're probably the only one who are on track, I guess. Giorgio, take us to the rail segment of transport, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you for the invitation. Hello, everyone. So concerning rail, indeed, so I am managing the Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking, and similarly to the clean hydrogen and also clean aviation. As explained before, also our raison d'être is, building up new solutions and making innovation possible. But possible to whom and for what? So at the end, we need to make sure that in Europe, we are able to have a single European railway area. We are able to meet the objectives of the Union, digital transition, green transition. But at the end, it's for our citizens and our businesses. So when I look at the rail perspective, our focus is really to make a rail more competitive. And there are several ways in order to do that. Our focus is really on identifying what are those technological solutions that make possible to advance the rail sector, make it more attractive, make it more competitive. And the way how we are achieving it on top of financing research and innovation and risky research and innovation and collaborating with other sectors and importing technologies like hydrogen in the rail sector is also looking very much on harmonizing our systems. Contrary, for example, to the aviation sector, rail doesn't have a lot of margin. What we have in terms of cost is still very high. So our priority is really making sure that we can integrate those innovations at sustainable cost at the end that will be then bring up to our citizens and our businesses. And for this joint undertaking is quite peculiar because we also have a high work on standardization activities. We're not a standardization bodies, but we are preparing all the standardization and also regulation. I think some of you knows that the rail sector is heavily regulated. And all of these should be accompanied so that there is no barrier with the introduction of those innovations on one side. And on the other side, we can make economies of scales, because if we have the same solutions deployed all over Europe, not only our solutions are interoperable, but more cost efficient. Interoperability is also key in the rail sector. We are operating a system that is a guided transport mode. So there are some, let's say, conditions that make it difficult to have innovations that it's very much different from one place to another, because our aim is to have, again, a single European railway area. So therefore, the collaboration is a key element. Collaboration across sector, but also across stakeholder. And this is the reason why in the Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking, we don't only have the industry that is involved in our activities, but we also have infrastructure manager that deals with the infrastructure, and if we're thinking of hydrogen, is also a key element, and also the operating company. By doing this, we can also increase the technological readiness level, because we can test and demonstrate with the final client. Well, not the final because it's us, the final client, but the clients that the industry that innovate will sell their solutions. This will really allow us to bridge a little bit the gap towards the deployment. The deployment still, in some cases, will need to be accompanied, and with CINEA, it's clearly instruments that we have at our disposal, like a CEF. All of these under, obviously, the policy direction and also the decision on where we need to go in terms of deployments, in terms of innovation, in terms of future solutions on the rail system that are brought forward by the European Commission.
Thank you so much. This would not have been possible without the public funding schemes from the Commission. So maybe Torsten, Klimke, could you say a few words about your responsibilities and specifically a little more on your hydrogen engagements?
Thank you very much. First of all, apologies for appearing late. If any of you intend to use metro lines 2 and 6 for the way back, please check whether they're running again, because at the moment there's a complete breakdown. So and you ask about what are my responsibilities. One of them is framework conditions for urban mobility. So I'm not responsible for the transport system as such here, just for the framework conditions for 431 urban nodes. But at the same time, I have to say, they deployed stewards everywhere, so there were people who could actually tell you what is not working and which exit to get out. So I'm here in a combined mode of metro, bus, walking, cycling, and running for the last bit. But what has that got to do with hydrogen? So you mentioned the funding, and I would summarize funding under framework conditions. So framework conditions that are needed for hydrogen, for deploying hydrogen, for using hydrogen. And we have two aspects there. The legislation and the hard infrastructure, and then of course funding as much as possible. And public funding will never, especially from the Commission side, will never be enough to fund all of it, but we can take some of it, and in particular if you look into CEF or AFIF funding schemes, there's co-funding by the Commission for grants, with grants to support deployment. But at least as important are the legal framework conditions for actually making sure that we have infrastructure in the future. So if we look at the very beginning of this, the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Directive, as it was in the very beginning, some of you those involved from the beginning will remember, it was quite difficult to get hydrogen in there at all. We were more ambitious from the Commission side with our proposal, so back, this is more than 12 years ago. But member states thought that we weren't ready. So the goals in the first version of the infrastructure directive were voluntary and quite low, and I think we were positively surprised that with the first revision, so the work starting for the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Regulation, there was already more seen on the ground than maybe we had been hoping for it, but that many member states were expecting. So it was a bit of a positive surprise. So now in the current Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Regulation, we have more ambitious goals for hydrogen deployment. Every 200 kilometers along the TEN-T core network, refueling stations at every urban node, so 431 nodes. These nodes typically, if you look at ports or airports, these are typically also located at a node, so that they also fall within this. We do see progress. Should we have more progress? Probably. And we are already anticipating the next steps. So the revision of the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Regulation, the implementation, member states have to report on where they are, but we are heading for a revision of the whole package but in 2026. So basically looking at where we are and what can be the next steps. So framework conditions from a regulatory side, also standardization, of course, of the refueling, And then funding, seed funding is maybe the wrong term, but it's not that we can fund 100% of it from the EU side, but we help to mitigate the risk a bit. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, and for sure I think all these partnerships are really leveraging your Commission public funding. We've seen that through the assessment of the partnerships represented here as well. So this leads us to, thank you everyone, it leads us to a set of questions, and I will challenge you, Jaap, to reply to the first question. We are wondering if your segment of transport, in this case Z, would you see yourself as a front runner, or do you really need some breakthroughs before hydrogen and hydrogen derivatives could play a significant role in seaborne transport?
I would say, of course, a front runner. Otherwise, I would throw myself in front of a bus. But maybe first some other things. So we have this co-program partnership on zero-emission waterborne transport. The sector is often seen as conservative. I would say the sector is not conservative. The sector is maybe introvert, not communicating sufficiently what is being done. The partnership in Horizon Europe makes available around 530 million of co-financing, and the sector, at the same moment in time, the sector which is affiliated to us, invests 3.3 billion or more. So I think that shows the leverage effect of what the sector is investing and the progress it wants to make. Now maybe first back to some definitions, because you refer to sea, other refers to maritime, then you have waterborne transport. Let's say that I use waterborne transport for now, and why waterborne? It includes both inland navigation, but also the maritime transport angle. And there we looked at how are we going to implement, trying to implement all of these technologies which have been developed. We said, okay, we have about 112,000 maritime vessels worldwide. We have around 12,000 inland navigation vessels worldwide. They have different power requirements, different autonomy. So autonomy means how long before you bunker or before you fuel your vessel again. And we grouped it along 6 ship types. And why am I saying this? Because that comes back later in where are solutions nearing readiness and where is more efforts needed. So we start with inland navigation, then we have short sea shipping. Short sea shipping in our definition between EU ports or between an EU port and a neighboring country. Ferries, specifically ferries, because they have a different, sometimes they are included in short sea, sometimes it's a different category. Cruise ships. Why cruise ships? It's a unique European product and often front runners in the uptake of sustainable technologies. Intercontinental shipping, and then the category offshore. But as I said in the beginning, and I think I need to repeat it, the majority of the ship owners in Europe has 1 or 2 vessels. And it's not that all of these ship owners are the big multinational players. 1 or 2 vessels, so small and medium-sized enterprises. And the average lifetime of a vessel, depending a bit on the trade, I mean in container shipping it's between 10 and 12 years, in other ship types it's 30 years, in some it's 40 to 50 years. So we need to take all of that into account and we were referring to ecosystem before. There was a recent study from a classification society in which it was revealed that the worldwide shipbuilding capacity, so the worldwide shipbuilding capacity is insufficient to meet the targets set by the International Maritime Organization, which are even, where the EU is even a front runner in setting targets. So we need to see collectively how are we going to move forward here as fast as possible. Absolutely, technologies are part of that system. We have the technology breakthrough. We have the breakthrough on sufficient quality of fuels available worldwide. Why do I repeat that last part? It's not only the SMEs, which is often not known, but it's also thought that a lot of the ships sail in liner shipping, but the majority of the ships worldwide sail in tramp. So they don't know which port they are going to call next. Where I think we are getting towards finalization in market readiness is the low power requirement, low autonomy. I think in the Innovation Fund we see now hydrogen push barges being built in the Paris region. So I think on lower power requirement, lower autonomy, we are getting to near market ready solutions. Where I think we really need to scale up is in the high power requirements, higher autonomy. Also because of these ship types are mainly responsible for the majority of the greenhouse gas emissions worldwide.
Thank you, Jaap. I think we will switch to the aviation sector, and I'll present this, the question in a little different way. Which technological breakthroughs do you see to be really implementing to solve and address to really implement hydrogen as a fuel in aviation?
As I've just mentioned before, hydrogen will address two aspects of the carbon neutral transformation of the sector. On one end, on sustainable aviation fuel, which is a very important element for which we need scale up of production, we need accelerating the investment, we need to make sure that Europe will be at the front run of the production, which is not yet the case, because when we compare to the US and other continents, in fact, we see that for the moment we are standing behind. So this is one thing. And on the other hand, this is using hydrogen as an energy supply for the next aircraft generation. It's a very challenging element because we need, first of all, to have a transformation of the infrastructure and to have availability of hydrogen. But hydrogen is not a question whether we'll use it or not. We need it, whatever we do, either for sustainable aviation fuel or for technologies. In terms of technologies, what is important with hydrogen, this is a true zero emissions solution. And so this is something very important because hydrogen will not emit any carbon in the atmosphere. And especially for the aviation sector, what is quite specific is that we are emitting carbon at 30,000 feet altitude, which is quite specific. And so far, we could wonder with solutions like direct air carbon capture, we will capture carbon which is at that level of altitude. That's why hydrogen is one solution. And to make that happen, we need to further mature the technologies. Lionel mentioned before one of the very prominent projects, EVAN, that had demonstrated the potential of hydrogen based on fuel cell, based on liquid hydrogen on a small carrier aircraft, which flown for 1,500 kilometers. And our ambition in aviation is to pursue this approach and to scale this up. To scale this up by 2030, which is not so far from now. But to address this ambition, we need first of all to develop a fuel cell multi-megawatt powertrain that will be capable to generate and to power up to 2.5 megawatts powers at powertrain level. We are not yet there. We are more or less close to 1 megawatt in lab at TRL4, and so we need to upscale this approach. Powertrain is one thing. We need also to have energy storage devices which are ready and fit for purpose for the new aircraft generation, because hydrogen is more volumetric to carry the same amount of energy, and so this is the second part, which impacts significantly the aircraft, and that can reduce as well the number of seats available. So this is another story. And probably the last one, which is not necessarily well known, is the fuel distribution system. Because operating hydrogen in a liquid form requires, in fact, very specific distribution systems, highly safety standards requirements. And so this is an element as well that we are investigating. And the last but not the least, if we want to make this happen for aviation, we need to make sure that we'll have the right standards requirements and we'll have the right certification. Because what we need to remind is that every second an Airbus aircraft is taking off in the world. There are no incidents, no accidents which are occurring. The last one with fatalities was in 2020, so which is already 4 years ago. And so which means we need to preserve that level of standards if we want to operate with hydrogen. So this is a very important element that we are also investigating clearly significantly with the aviation, with the European Agency for Safety Aviation.
Thank you very much. Now a question to Mr. Travaini and Mr. Ferrer. It's about collaboration between transport mode. Which spillover do you expect from another transport mode into the rail sector, for example? And for you, Mr. Ferrer, it's linked with the intermodality, the infrastructure that would support different transport mode. How could that help to speed up the hydrogen mobility?
So thank you for the question again. Well, it's very simple. Rail cannot transfer neither people nor goods from A to B, so synergies with other transport mode is key. But there is also another reason where we really see this spillover effect as a positive case. It's because how do we make best use of our scarce resources? In reality, you may think that the different transport modes are addressing very diverse challenges, but the fundamental technological bricks remains the same. We're looking for improving maintenance, so we're all using, AI techniques. We are, looking into decreasing, indeed, our energy consumption. So we're looking for electrification solutions or hydrogen type of solutions, etc. So those spillover effects are key. So on one side, if an industry is innovating, what I will try first to look is, and I take it over and do a small adaptation rather than restarting from scratch. And this requires what? It requires collaboration. And I think the fact that we have across transport mode, sectorial initiatives under which we can then discuss with, facilitate greatly this type of exchange. I can see it, and we have experienced in Shift to Rail before and now in Europe's Rail. The example is with clean hydrogen. We first started a collaboration on a study to identify what can be done, and then this resulted in a project where the rail sector collaborated with the hydrogen sector, making sure that this is possible. We're doing the same with, for example, the aviation sector in the areas of the traffic management. How is it possible that we are not able today to offer to our citizens a synchronized timetable, when you are taking the train and you're taking the aviation? And, the example in this case is that joint undertaking, like in this case, Cesar and Europe's Rail, are there to make it possible, which otherwise it will not be possible in simply bilateral agreement that are still going on, but not at system level. Another example that I can cite is with the new technologies, for example, on chips, on communication, and all of these needs to be integrated, because at the end, like hydrogen, you are a technology provider that needs to be integrated into a system. So again, collaboration, spillover effect, looking into why not if, for example, on the vessel side, there are similar requirements.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Then Mr. Ferrer, shared infrastructure between transport mode.
Well, intermodality, as you know, as I mentioned, we are targeting all modes of transport. So we do not preclude which one should be privileged in terms of having certain type of infrastructure or even certain fuel. That's why we have a FER, the regulation as well, which does not privilege any fuel. We have a predictability, and we know that all fuels can be used by all modes of transport. So of course, what we see from the implementation of projects is that one of the main obstacles is the low offtake of hydrogen. So you need clients, you need users for the infrastructure to be used. So of course, if you can optimize the use of the infrastructure, it's very valid for everybody. From our perspective, we have the infrastructure to supply energy and to supply alternative fuel, which is in place. And allows for the market to be developed and allows ultimately the transport to be decarbonized, which is our ultimate aim, to have a decarbonized economy by 2050. So we are targeting we are heading to the right directions. And at the same time, for the operators, indeed, we do not see any problem in financing infrastructure that could serve the needs of several operators in different modes. If we look at the rail sector, of course, our target is electrified lines. So normally, we don't need hydrogen for electrified lines, but we are still supporting hydrogen for shunting locomotives, for example, and of course, this may serve the needs for road transport. The same in ports,
where it can serve the needs of both dual use of road, maritime, and we just received, actually in the last call, we just evaluated, I cannot display the results now, it's not yet official, but we received the very first project with a possible dual use for airport ground services, ultimately in the next phase, and to start with captive fleets to secure the volumes of hydrogen to be used for the road sector. So it's coming from the market, and we are ready to support, of course, this, even though we are addressing the needs by sector, by transport sector. We are, of course, open to dual use.
Okay. We have a last question related, and it was also touched upon here. Of course, for any application, we need the regulatory framework to be in place. But the question is related to, or we could phrase it as, do we need a fast track to meet the targets? Or can we use or more utilize the old conventional ways of putting together the regulatory framework? Because as we know, it's urgent to implement the new technologies. And Isabelle, would you reflect a little bit on that from your side, knowing that there are very stringent regulations for not least the port applications?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to refer to the stringent legislation, which is often the case. So I think we just have to realize a port is not a user of hydrogen. I mean, and it's not, the port of course has to green as port, but we try to facilitate the greening of shipping and the greening of all transport sectors, maybe, but certainly shipping, because that's the main one. And there I would say that hydrogen or the hydrogen carriers, if there is a choice to make, maritime is difficult to decarbonize, so maybe there should be some priority for the use of to maritime. But what do we need as legislation? That's a good question, and I think we need a framework, but we need also to see that this is a market in development. So you need quite some flexibility as well to leave the market to develop in a way. But what we see, and what if we talk about hydrogen and what we see as list of to-dos is working on the permitting. There are efforts that have been made over the last years at European level, but it remains to be seen how this will be implemented at regional, local level, and so on. And there we see everywhere with everyone you talk, if you talk about the development of the infrastructure that is needed, the pipelines, etc., that this is a huge challenge. Huh? And it's also linked to the space. I mean, we need a lot of space. For hydrogen, we commissioned a study a couple of years ago, which really stated that for the development of hydrogen compared to like fossil energies, and of course we have to go the way of decarbonization, but you need 5 times the space. And if that is something that we need also to convey at all levels, at all policy levels, and also to the citizens. What is also important for us is the strengthening the import of hydrogen. If we look at the funding and at the support, we also think that there should be a support there, because this import pillar of hydrogen will be very important, and ports can play their role, because the cost of hydrogen is of course high, and if you can do it, you know, at a lower cost or bring in some and also meet the targets, this is important. If I can say something that is very important, of course, are all the investments. It has been said, and we are very grateful to my neighbor here, to Sef, for all this funding that we received, and all, I would say all, it's also not so big, because ports are not the biggest takers of the CEF funding, not at all. But in general, and there we see a big challenge for the coming period, because we hear the Commission plans to change the budget. We also hear rumors about the future of the Connecting Europe facility, and there we see a possibly big issue, because I think it's not the moment, if we talk about developing this hydrogen economy, about developing Europe and as a front runner in competition with Asia, in competition with the US. If we go here in Europe for a fragmentation of how you use the budget, and we leave it to the individual member states, this will, I mean, you know, energy, transport, and here we are at the crossing of both. These are really the backbones of your internal market. So if you split that, then we really will have an issue there. So this would be a plea for everyone to stand up on that, because otherwise we make it difficult for everyone.
I think you gave a passing to Torsten here. Maybe you could say a few words from your perspective on the last question. Thank you.
Thank you. I mentioned framework conditions already, and today we count, I think, 269 hydrogen refueling stations along 10T, which is roughly half of the goal for 2030. They're not all there yet in size, in terms of size, capacity, interfaces, but a good bit has happened already. And if we put this into relation, for example, to 300 buses that we currently have in the EU running on hydrogen, that's basically one station per bus. I know they're not in the locations where maybe the buses want to have them, but these numbers are tiny. So the numbers of buses, especially if you compare to China, to some areas, Southern America, the feedback we get from the public transport operators, they love these buses. They say they're super reliable. If the network was there, some are telling us we would prefer them over the battery electric. Because super reliable, easy to refuel, fantastic. But they're not there yet. So it's also a question of convincing the users. I'm assuming most people present here believe in hydrogen. No? So is there anyone, and there's no shame in saying so, who says, I'm listening here because I want to be convinced. I absolutely don't believe in hydrogen for transport. Anyone here? No? But you know, and I know that there are many people outside of this room who don't believe in. Talk to those people. Huh? I don't need to convince you. You don't need to convince me. But we all need to convince those who actually don't believe in it. So those are the ones to talk to. Operators. Tell them what's working, especially in road transport. Road transport is quite advanced. I know that in maritime, inland waterway, shipping, aviation, rail, there might be more issues still, but road is quite advanced. So please do talk to others. I believe the framework conditions are there. We need to implement them now. We provide funding. CEF, AFIF, these programs, other programs are available. The targets haven't been met. They are out there, and we are looking in 2 years' time. We're looking at, what could be the future targets. Where are we, and what can we do in the future? So I believe the framework conditions are on a good way. Now the implementation needs to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I guess the skeptics are stuck in the metro or something, as they were not here, obviously. But thank you all. Thank you so much to all the speakers for a very interesting panel discussion. What we were witnessing is that hydrogen is eventually also being adopted in several new segments of transport. And we, of course, look positively at that. There are still some remaining challenges, for sure. The availability of clean fuel is a key here. It's a challenge, as well as, of course, the enabler to a final launch of these solutions. And last but not least, the synergies across sectors or segments of transport is key for our joint success. And for sure, we have to keep high safety levels. Otherwise, we would never succeed in this contribution. So thank you to the panel. Thank you to Lionel as well. And give them a hand. Thank you.